An uneasy alliance, Germany and the Ottoman Empire. The First World War saw a constellation of shifting alliances, with nations seeking strategic advantage in a global conflict. One such alliance, forged between the German Empire and the Ottoman Empire, was a curious and consequential partnership. Despite shared interests in defying the dominance of Britain and Russia, the alliance was fraught with underlying tensions and ultimately proved to be a fragile one. Germany's interest in the Ottoman Empire stemmed from its desire to disrupt British and French control over key trade routes and strategic territories. The Ottomans, facing internal instability and pressure from Russia, saw Germany as a potential counterweight to their traditional rivals. The signing of the German-Ottoman alliance in August 1914 marked a significant development, drawing the Ottoman Empire into the wider European conflict. However, the alliance was far from a perfect union. Germany viewed the Ottomans as a strategic asset, a gateway to the Middle East and a potential disruptor of British interests in the region. The Ottomans, on the other hand, were wary of German dominance and sought to leverage the alliance to secure their own geopolitical objectives. One pivotal event that highlighted the complexities of the alliance was the Ottoman entry into the war. The surprise attack on Russian ships docked in the Black Sea by the Ottoman Navy in October 1914 effectively brought Russia into the conflict on the side of the Triple Entente. While this move served German interests, it was not part of the original agreement, and it exposed the Ottomans to the full brunt of Russian military might. The course of the war further strained the alliance. German military advisors played a significant role in the Ottoman war effort, but their presence often fueled resentment and friction. The Ottomans faced immense challenges on multiple fronts, from the brutal campaigns against Russia in the Caucasus to the Allied landings at Gallipoli. German support, while substantial, fell short of fully meeting Ottoman needs. Despite the difficulties, the alliance did have some successes. The Ottoman defense of Gallipoli, a critical Allied campaign aiming to capture Constantinople, proved a major setback for the Entente powers. Ottoman control over key territories in the Middle East also disrupted British and French colonial ambitions. However, the tide of the war eventually turned against the Central Powers. The Ottomans suffered devastating defeats, and internal strains within the empire intensified. By 1918, the Ottoman Empire was on the brink of collapse, ultimately signing an armistice with the Allies in October of that year. The legacy of the German-Ottoman alliance in the First World War is complex. While it did achieve some tactical successes, it ultimately proved to be a fragile partnership. The underlying tensions and conflicting agendas of the two empires ultimately undermined their ability to wage a successful war. The alliance contributed to the demise of both empires, with the Ottoman Empire carved up in the post-war settlements and Germany facing crushing reparations and territorial losses. The Tinderbox ablaze. The skirmish at John Cherry. In the hushed hours before dawn on August 2, 1914, a single act shattered the fragile peace that had held Europe in its thrall. On the verdant plains of John Cherry, a tiny French village nestled on the border with Germany, a skirmish erupted. A prelude to the cataclysmic storm that would engulf the world in the crucible of war. Lieutenant Albert Meyer, a young German officer brimming with martial ardor, led a small cavalry patrol across the frontier. Theirs was a transgression, a brazen act in defiance of unspoken agreements. France, wary of provoking a conflict, had withdrawn its troops 10 kilometers from the border, a gesture of goodwill misinterpreted by the Germans as weakness. Meyer and his men rode into an unsuspecting John Cherry, the pre-dawn stillness broken only by the clopping of hooves and the murmur of their hushed voices. Their trespass, however, was not destined to remain undetected. A lone French sentry, vigilant in the pre-dawn gloom, spotted the approaching patrol and raised the alarm. The ensuing encounter remains shrouded in the fog of war. Accounts differ, each nation clinging to its narrative of righteousness. The French claim Meyer, fueled by belligerent zeal, charged recklessly into the village, firing wildly. The Germans countered that their patrol was met with unprovoked hostility, a hail of bullets erupting from the startled French. In the ensuing chaos, Lieutenant Meyer was struck down, a single bullet piercing his abdomen. He crumpled from his horse, the lifeblood draining from a wound that would prove fatal within seconds. The French sentry, Émile Peugeot, also fell, mortally wounded in the exchange. The remaining German soldiers, their bravado shattered by the sudden violence, scattered in disarray. Some fled back across the border, carrying with them the chilling news of the first blood spilled in the coming storm. Others, disoriented and fearful, were captured by the French. The skirmish at John Cherry, though brief and seemingly insignificant, stands as a pivotal moment in history. The fragile web of alliances, meticulously woven in the years leading up to the conflict, tightened with a chilling inevitability. News of the skirmish raced through the capitals of Europe, each nation interpreting the event through the prism of their own anxieties. For Germany, it was an act of French aggression, a justification for their preordained plans of conquest. For France, it was a blatant violation of their sovereignty, a confirmation of their worst fears. The world watched with bated breath as the dominoes began to fall. Declarations of war, like thunderclaps, echoed across the continent. What began as a single, ill-fated patrol on a quiet summer morning morphed into a global conflagration, a war that would shatter empires, redraw maps, and leave a generation forever scarred. The skirmish at John Cherry serves as a stark reminder of the fragility of peace and the unforeseen consequences of seemingly minor actions. A single act of defiance, a single bullet fired in the pre-dawn light, plunged the world into an abyss of violence. The echo of that shot reverberates through the corridors of history, a somber testament to the devastating cost of human ambition and national pride. A tempest of steel, the Battle of the Frontiers. In the summer of 1914, as the storm clouds of war gathered over Europe, a colossal clash unfolded on the Western Front, the Battle of the Frontiers. This titanic struggle, a brutal ballet of millions locked in mortal combat, marked the descent into the abyss of the First World War, a conflict that would reshape the world order and leave an indelible scar on the human spirit. The stage for this epic confrontation was set along the intertwined borders of France, Germany, Belgium, and Luxembourg. French and British forces, resolute in their defense of democracy and the established order, dug in along meticulously prepared fortifications. Facing them stood the colossal German war machine, fueled by dreams of dominance and armed with the latest advancements in military technology. On August 1, 1914, German troops, a seemingly unstoppable tide of steel and men, surged across the frontier. The Schlieffen Plan, predicated on a swift victory over France, hinged on overwhelming their defenses through sheer force of numbers. The initial assault was a whirlwind of violence. German heavy artillery pounded French fortifications, reducing them to rubble. Massive formations of infantry, supported by the thundering roar of machine guns, swept across the battlefield. French and British soldiers, though resolute, were overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the German onslaught. The Battle of the Frontiers unfolded in a cacophony of deafening explosions, choking smoke, and the desperate screams of the wounded. Cities like Liège and Namur, once vibrant centers of commerce, became battlegrounds, their cobbled streets stained crimson with the blood of the fallen. Heroic acts of defiance punctuated the carnage, individual soldiers performing feats of courage amidst the maelstrom of war. However, the tide of battle gradually began to shift. French and British forces, bolstered by reinforcements, launched a series of counteroffensives. The Battle of Charleroi, a desperate clash of armies, saw both sides suffer devastating losses, but ultimately blunted the German advance. The Battle of Mons, a valiant stand by the British Expeditionary Force, further stalled the German juggernaut. The Battle of the Frontiers, though inconclusive in its outcome, was a pivotal moment in the early stages of the First World War. The initial German offensive, though initially successful, failed to achieve its objective of a swift victory. The brutal fighting exposed the limitations of pre-war military doctrines and the devastating lethality of modern weaponry. The battlefield became a crucible of death, forever etching the horrors of war into the collective consciousness. The legacy of the Battle of the Frontiers is a somber one. Millions of soldiers marched into battle, fueled by patriotism and a sense of righteousness, only to be cut down in the prime of their lives. The verdant fields of France and Belgium were transformed into desolate landscapes, littered with the wreckage of war. The Battle of the Frontiers stands as a grim testament to the destructive power of unchecked nationalism and the enduring cost of human conflict. Its thunderous echoes continue to reverberate throughout history, a cautionary tale for generations to come. In the next chapter, we will cover the British and French invasions of German territories in Africa and Asia, as well as the battle that resulted in the almost complete destruction of Russia's First and Second Armies, the Battle of Tannenberg.